Welcome back to the Canyon. Welcome back to me fighting against nonsensical thoughts of, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, you should be doing that. No, this is a channel about toy cars. Do what you like. So what I would like to do today is initiate, it came from the workbench, volume 46. Boy, I sure do hope that I'm getting my numbering correctly and that this is 46. I want to say that the most recent one was 45. That's Gary Musey, which I still laugh every time I say it. Number 46, we have stuff already underway that I could be working on, and there's a part of my brain that tells me I should be working on, but no! This is what I want to do right now. How far we get into this, I have no idea. What we do have is we have a box that has a collection of parts. We have not gotten into the assembly of this basically at all. I had purchased this pair of chassis rails. They are the Who Crawler, I think. I don't remember why I bought them. I don't remember if they had a purpose. Maybe they were on sale. We've used this chassis once before. This is the RX, ZLX, ZF. This is Yella's chassis, so I think it's my most viewed video. So why not? We'll build another one, only it won't be anything like Yella at all. It will bear no resemblance to Yella as a vehicle, because that's what we do. One of the Canyon Faithful was kind enough to send in what he didn't need while building himself a mullet. So here we have a partly assembled Element portal axle. I had to get this far so I could know what direction it was going to need to rotate, which side I needed to have the ring gear on. Pretty simple stuff. This just came out of the bin as is. I want to say this is Ghost Rover's front axle before he went to the HD44s, because then we could put underdrive, overdrive in him. So this is Ghost Rover's front axle. I mean, to the point where like the parts where they don't match. I think I've got a tie rod somewhere. We'll find one. Because I have said, and we're not doing it in the easiest possible way, but I have said that Element, by making this the way they did the axle, the hodgepodgey way that they've done the axle, which is to effectively just bolt on a portal. Well, you can kind of see if we line up the pumpkins, if we sort of line up the pumpkins. Let's get that aiming straight-ish, and we'll get that guy aiming straight-ish. Do you see where yeah. I think Element says 13 millimeters per side. So the rear of this is going to be an inch wider than the front, an inch. But we are going to address that in the simplest way possible, which is we are going to hope that we can just hub it. I hope that we can hub it. If not, that is probably, honestly, pretty close. Pretty close. If anything, those will make the front and... Oh, never mind. NVM. I have... it looks like I also have one step. Nope, they're the exact same size. So the front might be 4 millimeters wider than the rear if we go with those hubs. I would like to do it with SLWs if I have them on hand, if I have them on wheels, because like on, say, these wheels, I got big like 22s. So if I run 22s in the front and regular 9s in the back, that's 13 millimeters a side. They should be, we should have, I'm going to try to get the track close. So as I halfway mentioned, I'm not doing this the easiest way. The easiest way to do this is these are the included portal gears from the Element portal. 1520. That is 1.33 to 1. So that means that with no other changes, you have 33% rear underdrive. I consider personally 33% to be a little too much. But if you have a Stealth X, if you're mulleting your Element, you just stick your Stealth X, don't do anything to it, just flip it around. Turn it 180 degrees, and if you have the optional gearing inside of it, 11 point some odd percent, That is going to underdrive the front axle by about 11%, leaving you around 21.5%, 22% rear underdrive, which is pretty much perfect. If you feel like you need a little bit more, you can run the 6%, the quote-unquote stock, which would leave you about that 25 to 26% in the rear, if math is mathing. I didn't do the full math. I just did 375 times 1.33, found that ratio, found the front ratio, and said, oh, we're right about there. So, well, it's not that I don't want to do that, but I kind of don't want to do that. You can see the hint of it right over here. After I built Clank, which was my first mullet, this will be the third mullet in the Canyon fleet, the first Element mullet, the Ella mullet. Someone had said, oh, here's what people do to build the easiest mullet. They pick a simple straight axle for the front. It could be any straight axle. They're mostly 3.75 to 1. They put that in the front. They put a TRX4 axle in the rear. And then they take a 2-low and they run it backwards. So it sends 30% underdrive to the front, which leaves them a net of a reasonable amount of underdrive in the rear. And if you're using an AR44 and say a TRX4 axle, you can change the ring and pinion in those gears to fine tune it. These are Element axles. We have no ability to fine tune it. No one makes a ring and pinion for this, I think because they made their pinion so diminutive. It is a tiny, tiny pinion. And it's the reason that people tend to blow these gears out, because the engagement, the amount of tooth touching tooth is very small in an Element axle. But that's fine. We're fine. This axle's all weighted out. It's a half stock pieces and half factory team pieces, so we just kind of matched it. We threw a bunch of factory team pieces on this one. So we have a hodgepodge. The only sad part is that, as I mentioned, we have to flip that ring gear. I have a matching SSD aluminum cover, but you can't run it because it'd be upside down, because the gear is on the opposite side, as one would expect it to be. So, as I don't intend to fit this vehicle with a Stealth, and I intend to fit it with this, with the 30%, that would technically work, but it wouldn't get me what I want, because this is the rear axle. We'll assemble the rest of it momentarily. This is the front axle. So this has no underdrive nor overdrive. This effectively has 33%. If we run this in the conventional fashion like that, we now have 63% rear underdrive, which is a little too much. And if we flip it around this way, we have 3% rear underdrive, which is not, like, basically doesn't exist. What we have done is slowed the front axle down a lot. We like this. So what we do, thankfully, is we take just stock gears, generic stock gears from Amazon for a Capra 10.3, any axial. And do they bolt in? Well, that's what's in this axle right now. It's very stiff. But yeah, that's what's in this axle right now. So these are 1223, which is 1.91 to 1. So you would have 52% rear underdrive. 52% is a real lot. But then remember, if we flip this around and sending 30% underdrive to the front, what does that net us in the rear? 22%. 22% is kind of a sweet spot. And if we're given the option to slow down the vehicle entirely, the long, short, and simple of it is we're going to do exactly that. And that is what we're going to do with this. We're going to underdrive the rear. The stock amount for an axial, I don't think this is the right size pin. That pin falls out of that hole too easily. That is not the right size pin. This is the problem with how okay. I just tried to put a wheel pin in for the gear pin, and you don't need a lot of spatial reasoning to tell that those are different sizes, which means I've lost the other wheel hex pin. It's probably on the floor. Is it? It's probably on the floor. So we're going to underdrive this thing basically as much as we possibly can. 30% to the front. Portal reduction in the rear. This is going to, there is no effectively there's no negative to this, because all it means is that we can KV up, or we can volt up, and I'm thinking about volting up. I wasn't thinking about volting up a minute ago, but I'm definitely thinking about volting up now. The only motor I have that is going to fit this parts collaboration without messing with everything is this is a drone. This is a Flash Hobby drone outrunner, so it is not a torque monster. It also, I kind of feel like its best days are behind it. I did indeed chuck the center shaft up on the lathe and turn it down to accept 3mm pinions. It will quite almost certainly not be the final motor. I'll put like a Rhino S12 in here, or a Secure, one of those. I keep doubting myself and thinking I didn't get the mesh right. But honestly, if I go like that, it feels fine. So at most, we will need a shim. Yeah, if I give that a little tug, give it a little tug, and turn that, it turns a lot easier. Sounds a little crunchy, but the gears are also super fresh. Super fresh! So we're going to get this, we're going to attempt to get this installed. It goes together fairly easily. If I was going to say something to detract, it would be that the fitment of the portal drive shaft, the part that I'm fighting with right now, the fitment of it inside the bearing is like a barely type of a situation. They don't want to go together. I had to tap the other one together with my tiny hammer. This one we did better. This is probably the way to do it. Put the bearing on the drive shaft, then try to insert, and then press it apart again. It's just fiddly. It's a little fiddly. Oh hey, I found the other pin for the hex. It begins as many parts bin, parts drawer, random builds begin, which is by looking around and seeing if we even have the parts on hand to do what I want. Do I have a steering servo? Not explicitly. I'm going to be running most likely that Rhino V40 that's right there, which means we need direct power. There are no substitutes. There are no exceptions. You have to run direct power or you don't run. And I don't think I have that. But at the same time, I don't imagine that we'll get to that part today anyway. If we can achieve slider, meaning set the wheelbase, and we have a target goal for the wheelbase. You might think that target goal is a number. It is not. We are going to pick a cosmetic wheelbase. And if we can put a little extra, if we can put a little stink on it, we will do that. Because this has been sitting in a box since we built Diablo. Diablo has been here for a hot minute. So that is the body for this. It just is. We're not going to change our mind midway through because the bundle of consonants chassis is definitely not safe from the Dremel. If we've got to cut that thing up to make that body fit, we're going to do that. If I have to cut the body up a little bit, I mean, I figure the fenders are pretty much just going to have to be trimmed off. I don't know how much of this thing is going to remain because we're not talking, like Capra axle, we put Capra axles, we could leave a lot more of that body intact. It has been here a long time, and now it is finally going on a build. I think I've got most of what's necessary. The rest can easily be obtained. We need a couple of M3x10s is what we need. And if one were to ask me, hey, tell me, how do you feel about the way they did the rear axle? How do you feel about what's your take on it just being a mirror of the front axle? I mean, it's just the front axle and the back. That's all we've done. Well, I can't fault him. I can't hold it against him. It's not unprecedented. MST does the exact same thing. I've seen a couple. I mean, this is a terrible comparison to make. But the Red Cat Everest is just 2 front axles. It's fairly common to see 2 front axles. So, I mean, it's a thing. It also saves them money because they don't have to make a new rear axle. It also makes it really easy to make it 4-wheel steer. If you wanted a 4-wheel steer mullet, you can absolutely do that. But then I sit here after saying that and I look at it and I go, they had to make a new C-hub. So you've got a front C-hub and a rear C-hub that are exactly the same. That's a plus. But without, I mean, other than GRC on the TRX4, rear portal clearance is almost always better if it has a dedicated box. If it's not a C-hub with a box that we're not going to use. Do I like that you could just 4-wheel steer it pretty effortlessly? Yeah. But I don't intend to 4-wheel steer it, so it does have a little element of hack-bodge to it. I mean, it just does. What it is, fortunately, is very easy to put together. Okay, it's relatively easy to put together. I didn't have instructions for it. I just started slapping pieces together, and it seems logical. I couldn't honestly tell which way to angle the C-hubs. Like, I didn't bother researching into what is Element's notion for orienting the C-hubs. So I just did it the way that I thought it looked good to me. And that's how we do things around here an awful lot. I just noticed that we have one extra, and it hasn't been put in. Why would they give us a spare? Why would you think it's a spare? So the Tulo that we're electing to put in the middle is labor saving on the one hand and labor intensive on the other, because that thing, we're not even going to bother to put to build the little, I have to find some little like mini. I might be able to use 4mm set screws. We'll see what length that comes out to. I need to build 2 tiny little rod links. They just attach them to these holes right here. Yeah. Gotta just go to there and there. I already put a link riser on it because you know what the internet will tell you. Link risers don't work. Well, the kind of goal I have in my head is we're not going to run class 1s on it. I would like to run something like Baja Pro X, Tutu Canyon Trail, Rovers, something like that. Something ridiculous, because we're already going to build something ridiculous. If we can avoid putting side skirts on it, I would like to do that. What I think we need to do is we've got big long screws here. Let's mock it up. It's easy to remember as well because the longer shaft is the underdrive side. This is one of the clones. It definitely does the thing. We have been swapping them around in and out. Zoidberg now runs a Tulo, and he runs a real one, an actual TGH, because we thought that this thing was making loud noises. It turns out it wasn't the gearbox at all. He was fitted with a belt drive to try to get his RPMs up, and the belt drive was slipping. It was really acting a fool. So I have this thing mounted at about that, 30-degree angle, because this guy coming out of the front, there are a couple chassis on Earth that are optimized for a Tulo And this is not one of them. Oh yes, I just remembered. I need to drill a hole in these chassis plates, because in terms of chassis plates that are not optimized for two-lows, you'll see that the two-low has 3 holes. This hole and this hole are for the links. This hole is to mount to the chassis. And if you look at the chassis, let's get that lined up. You see, we don't have a hole to put that in. So I'm going to mark that out. I will clamp or tape these guys together, and I will drill that 3rd hole. So if the question is, did he get it? Did he mark it in the right place? And did he get the holes to line up? We'll never know. We'll never ever know. Because the first thing I do is I measure center to center distance, then I measure edge to edge distance. I make the 2 holes. This is the hole that we had to drill. I mark the distance to that hole. I make my start punch. I punch the side. I then just stick a bunch of random screws through the 2 plates to hold them together, take them to the drill press, drill that hole. Then, without even testing anything for fitment, I change the drill bit out from a 3mm bit to a 3.2mm bit, and I re-drill all 3 holes in 3.2mm. That means that when the screws are in, that gives you 0.1 millimeters on either side of the screw to fit, and it goes together nicely. The wacky sideways gearbox, that's still pretty centered, and because we're running such a short motor, it shouldn't interfere with the drive shaft. We're still hoping it's not going to interfere with the drive shaft. The two-low, we've got a couple of them in service, and I have one in a high-low chassis, and the high-low chassis is really the only one that kind of fits this thing without fussing and fighting. We will get the gearing to be whatever it needs to be, and I don't have to worry about things like running a giant spur gear on it, because we've got 30% gear reduction to the front. So all we can do, realistically, is we can mount this thing, and we can hope that the numbers are right. That's basically kind of what it comes down to. Yeah, it should be 30% over. Yeah, I don't know. You know what? I'm just not going to worry about it. What I am thinking is that we're going to have we basically have a portal level of reduction at both ends. That's right. So we should be shooting around an 1800. If we geared it normally, our gear reduction, I cannot for the life of me remember what the internal reduction is inside of a two-low. I know I computed it at some point, like what the final, what the output is. Is it like 9-to-1, 10-to-1, whatever it is? But I mean, that means let's just say that it is 10-to-1, and I think it's a little higher than that. The rear at 7.2. That means we're going to have about 72-to-1 in the rear, and about 20% faster in the front. So 14, 72, 58, like 58-to-1 in the rear. I mean, in the front. That's fine. 58 in the front, 72 in the rear. That's absolutely fine. We'll be fine with that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to try 4-link, obviously. You see the bracket. Yeah, I don't have a servo yet. What we're going to do is, first off, let's look at this. Okay, we're already going to need to, right, so there's so much cutting is already going to have to take place just to get this thing down. Cutting of both the body and the chassis, that's fine. I want this part of the body, like there's no universe in which these manage to stay. We're gonna cut almost all of the fenders off. I mean the rear fender, obviously. This is like Traxxas Fortec, I want to say, is what this is for originally. We're probably just gonna end up cutting the rear of the chassis to match that line at the back of the body. That'll look okay. We'll get that cut. These also pinch on it. We'll get that cut, and that will leave us the possibility of. Do we have one? Oh yeah, oh yeah. So this body kit comes with standoffs, and it comes with this delete. And that delete could come in really handy, because when we cut this, There's every chance. So I feel like the line of cut is probably going to come right down here like that. Drill us another hole or two, put that thing in place, drill some holes in this, and use screw retention to hold the back of the body on. And then we really only need one in the front. If I have some kind of clip or screw down to hold the front down, then we'll be good. If whatever we have to cut off of this is what we have to cut off of it. And we won't know exactly where this is going to sit. See this shock chart? If I pinch? Yeah, if we cut that chassis, we can get up farther. I figure this drop point on the chassis is going to get cut off. It's probably going to get rounded off behind this slot. It might go back to that one. Does that line up with these? I think I have another one of these. That is designed to fit like, it would fit like that. I don't know, we might have to cut it back more than that. So, what that looks like is, this thing's wheelbase kind of sits at about 12 inches, right about. We can cheat the front out a lot farther, because then when we steer, if the wheels are kicked out a little farther, we don't have to worry about them going into the body. I would like to leave some of this here. I don't know how much of it we're going to be able to leave there. So let's for the sake of this, let's say that we're kicking the front out to about there. I don't think we can go much further forward than there, because when the servo goes to full compression, it's going to go up into the body like that. So then the rear will be out back. Like, let's say if we put it there. Like, we're putting a, that'll help break over. Shorter wheelbase will help break over. So let's say that we put that about there. I should have put something under there to lean it on. So that would put our wheelbase, like I say, a cosmetically selected wheelbase is where we're shooting. Please just stay standing. Okay, we'll lean you against the body, and you can lean just like that-ish. We're just back past center. We're not back very far at all. And that would give us about, well, hecka. That's like 320. It's like 320 right there. So I feel like there's no chance of any rear fender surviving. We're going to have to cut it all the way off, because the outside of the portal box on this side is right at it, but the inside of the portal box is in that far. So the width, what we're looking at, so a hex to hex width is going to be 205. Call it 205 from the outside of the hex to the outside of the hex. This body, about from outside of fender to outside of fender is about 210. So we wouldn't have any room for flex. Yeah, if we chop this thing down, we're sitting around 145. That should be absolutely fine. That should be absolutely fine. I would like this body to sit as low as we can possibly get it. So we're going to do this the dumbest way I can think of, which is kind of have that, hold that so it doesn't fall over. And then we want the front axle, basically, we have so many shock holes across the top of this. Was that 2 rows of like 8? So we have a lot of freedom of movement. That is 45 millimeters of fore to aft. So we can kind of cheat our way to skid forward. Not extremely skid forward. We can't actually, I'm digging through the bins to find some 90s. Although we could run 100s. 75s. Some element. There we go. I can't for the life of me remember where I have a full set of factory team elements on here would be great. Although with how tight the body is, we're probably going to have to cut the body to fit the shock. So something like a Traxxas GTS might be better. GTS with SE springs will be really thin, so we won't have to. But if we got to cut it, we got to anyway. If we got to cut it, we got to cut it. Let me quickly, real fast like that is I'll just throw a rod in. That's right about 90 millimeters, so we're right about 90. So if we go low to, yeah, so mounting, I'm just looking at where is the servo mount going to be relative to marks on the chassis. Yeah, that's pretty good. So if we're right even with this, the slot in the front, the one that's not a hole, and then if the rear is sitting right there, because I don't want it outside the back. So yeah, we want this right about here. That's like 340. Yeah. With no fenders, we can get pretty far out. I'm just going to keep knocking everything over. So that's, we'll start with the front. That's the smart way to do it. We'll start with the front. So where this is sitting, right here, first we're going to check link length. We want to try to keep the ruler as flat as we can. And it goes right there. That's like a 145 front lower. That was putting us in the fourth hole from the back. That's really long for a front lower. 145 eye to eye is really long. We would want to go like 15% longer in the rear. Times 1.5. That's like a 167 rear. Where does 167 rear put us? It puts us right about where we would want to be. So, that looks really long. That looks really long. Arbitrary wheelbasing, 335. I would be, honestly, on this, I would be happier around something like a 320. So, we will go what looks like 10 millimeters, probably right about there, because we still have a lot of shock mounting holes to work with. So I'm going to go with that hole right there. That'll give us a bunch of the front of the chassis that we can chop off. Let's hold that in place. There we go. And then this guy will tuck in a little bit more, get him right about there. Cosmetic wheelbase, baby. That is 323. Oi, 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 oi. Now let's give it a guesstimate on the front. And then what we're going to do is we'll mock up those front links. And that front link is going to be, give or take, 125. So 125 front. I like to start, the starting point is 15% longer for the rear. So 125 times 1.15 is 144. 125, 144. And as this is sitting right now, rear link is where it's sitting right there is 140. So we'll go 5 millimeters longer on that. So if we can hit 125, 145, those are nice round even numbers. We will again be using TRX4 rod ends for this, or will we? That's a good question. Is it TRX4 rod ends? That was what my thought process was from the start. We would definitely need angled for the lowers. Let me find 2 angled ones and we will see what we're going to need. Or are the elements going to be a better pick? 125 eye to eye front is a pretty good place to start. That means we need a link that is shoulder to shoulder. 88 millimeters, so a 90. If I have straight 90s, we'll go straight 90. 90 is fairly common. There are some straight 90s. That does say 90, right? Yes, it does. Now, if we go with a element end, which I'd be fine with. This is an element. It's fine if we go element. To get a 125, This is my scientific method. We do use the duplicator to make sure that they're the same lengths. This would only need, because we have more link length, this needs an 80 shoulder to shoulder. So that's a lot more end, and we have already used the 80s. Do we have a high clearance 80? Yes, we do. Okay, decisions. Do we want a 90 front with shorter ends that are much more durable? Okay, there's a quick way to answer that question. I know how to answer that question right now, with no fussing or fighting. First thing is we find out what width balls does this use, and it uses 7.3, which means 7.1 on that side. Machining. So I am going to be using offsets one way or the other. It's getting offsets, so we'll knock one of these. I know that these are 7mm. We'll put one in an offset end, and this might be a foregone conclusion, because if these rod ends do not cooperate with this chassis plate, then there's no point in fitting rod ends like this to it. Although it looks like it is going to clear it, well, it's definitely a commitment. They clear. They do, however, well, the chassis sticks down below it a little. You can tell that's not the skid for the chassis, so we're going to be grinding on that carbon. Also, I mean, is it better or worse? I don't think that's something that's going to get hung up on rocks. I do think, though, that this type of rod end will absolutely get pummeled into submission in this application. So I guess the best way to go about this is to put on one of each. I don't remember if the balls that come in these are 5.8 or 5.7. No, that's a plenty good fit. So it's a choice, right? This is definitely a choice. We're arbitrarily choosing a lot of things, and we're kind of building to a body to a degree. So I would say, looking down the barrel, that's definitely, like, you can't even tell that guy's attached really. Look at the difference right there. Now, these are me-us ends, but they're just, well, they might be. They're all poured into this TRX4 rod end box. They are definitely more durable. Like, they are significantly more sturdy. I break the element ones fairly often, almost routinely, because just look at the difference in the amount of material above the hole. It's at least two times as thick, but then look at this one this way and look at this one this way. It's probably 50% wider. So there's a lot more meat to this. That said, I have a lot of the me-us ends, but I kind of have a lot of the element ends too. It's kind of an element build. Oh, I don't know. We can do high clearance front and rear. Oh, it's too many choices. We can do high clearance front and rear if we do element ends. We can't do high clearance fronts. Well, we can't. Oh, because I'm trying to be lazy and go out of the bags and not out of the bins. I could very well have 90 straights. Okay. I got to make a choice here. I can't. No. You know what? Okay. I'll make you a deal. I'm going to eat a sandwich. All right? Not in front of you. I'm going to eat a sandwich, and then I'm going to decide element links, rod ends, or TRX4 rod ends. So not only did I not have a sandwich, I had chicken and green beans. I don't explicitly know what happens. As of this recording, Nero's new album, Into the Unknown, came out a little while ago. It's just on binge repeat. Put the album on, about 45 minutes long. Album went all the way through. Started to autoplay, and it was just bangers. And you arrive at where we are now. We have to start where things are relevant. The lowers are 125 eye to eye. The lowers are fitted with element ends. The uppers are fitted. Everything, it's all element ends. because the decision was made for me by the axles. The big, beefy TRX4 ends do not fit on the axle. It is like, as soon as the screw goes in, they are effectively locked in place. You can move them a little. So element ends were thus chosen. And because element ends were chosen, it all ended up being high clearance. High clearance uppers and lowers, and for good reason. Here in the front, it would not function without the high clearance. As you see, we've got the high clearance clearing the behind the axle steering. That was a bit of a chore to sort out. The element shocks wouldn't fit because I had a memory. On an element, the shocks are straight up and down. So when they're mounted in this position, even here, the behind the axle, I went to a offset link. Like there might be a little more steering available there, but we hit the actual body of the shock. It's worse the other way. I think with a longer rod end at the bottom, you see how we're not in the top row of holes? Longer rod end at the bottom with the thin SE springs might get us better clearance. I personally don't have a problem with the way it sits now. The only thing is the way it sits now, we've got carbon rails, a Delrin chassis plate, a 2-low, and a 1700. There's no sprung weight at all. I anticipate it once everything's in place, probably sitting more somewhere about there, right about there. Element 0.7 in the front greens, 1.4 in the back grays. Because we have so much more laydown in the back, I don't know if the camera actually even shows this well enough. I can try to hold them in place. When it sits level, all of the links just go like this. So we're really gonna get that mullet clearance on this. We have zero fastener optimization. We have gearing chosen completely at random. Let me complete a thought from before. 125 lower, 100 front upper, 145 rear lower, 140 rear upper. All high clearance all the way around. The rear uppers did not need explicit to be high clearance. They were the only ones that I had in that exact length, which are they hundreds? I think they're hundreds. 95s shoulder to shoulder. That was all I had for that. And then the rear lowers are 100 shoulder to shoulder. Yeah, obviously 5 millimeters apart. So we are constrained a bit by the link placements made available to us by the chassis. The 1.4s are leaned way over. That might be past 45 degrees. It is just a random hole I chose to try to get the ride height fairly even-ish, to try to get the what I think. I'm looking at basically the tops of the shock towers and trying to get those somewhat level. There's a nice slope. It's a nice perfect slope across the bottom. I think it's going to slide pretty well. We've just got carbon and Delrin down there. I'm really happy with the rear pinion angle. I'm pretty happy with the front pinion angle. I don't usually like the servo mount leaning that much forward, but we still have a ton of caster clocked in, and we could go maybe one more spline tipped, but this is how we're going to run. Riser in the back, as much separation in the front as we can get, because that separation honestly looks just about right for what we're dealing with the mullet. Rear, front and rear of the carbon are going to need to be cut. The only where are you? Okay. The only drive shafts I have, not a problem, are cut to length. I was not ready to cut them today because I want to see the body in place. This fell at an exact, it's a 313 millimeter wheelbase. We did not seek that out, but that's where we ended up. I don't think I can go any shorter in the front. If I go any shorter, I can go a tiny, maybe 5 millimeters shorter in the front. So to maybe what would that be? 120 lower, 95 upper. Strange, the way the geometry of the chassis rails themselves are set. We've got a real length change between upper and lower in the front, but there's no pinion angle change in the front during compression, and we have almost no length difference, 5 millimeters. And there's no angle change on that either. I opted not to use the kit pieces for the rear axle. I just went with some blitz ends. It's not pretty, but once again, I wanted to get it set. I wanted to find out what length those need to be. Like, I feel like we're 0 toe in the rear. They're about 56 millimeters eye to eye. And also, seeing as Element has foisted it upon us, I can't decide if the blitz, I wish it was a turnbuckle, but I can't decide. The ball studs with the blitz ends might be a feature and not a bug. Because if you bound the rear end up real bad and it looked like something was going to snap, the ball end will just pop off and you can pop it back on. So I don't know. Maybe that is worth, well, for the inevitable ghost ride, that is where we're going to end up. All it really needs, I have to fabricate the little tray, like what TGH has, the little tray that goes here, and I'll put the receiver and the speed control on it, and the wires will be soldered down to the speed control. We'll keep that all out of the way. I'm thinking battery on servo on axle, because as I said, I would like to avoid wings if possible. TRX4 shocks with the skinny springs would probably be optimized, but we can get a test run on this without having to mess with anything. This guy is apparently a 313 millimeter wheelbase, thereabouts, right about. So if that's sitting there, like, it's far closer than I anticipated, and there will be a relatively slow, like, better to cut too little than too much. Might try to leave a little fender out here, because we can probably get, because we had to run the spacers to push the wheels out to make it even, we might be able to leave some fender and then just maybe do a cutout for where the shock is, because I can't lean the shocks in any more than they already are. Although, you know what I'm looking at right now? Of course you don't, but servo and axle is the thing that's going to stop it. If you went mad, no, chassis mounted wouldn't fit it either. I was like, you could run the shocks inside the rails, but some form of, only if you didn't have to have steering, some form of electronics is going to get in the way. So this is primarily the configuration. It needs cleanup. As you might notice, I have this clock back centered. I was looking at it and I was like, I mean, the rear is dead straight. The motor is so short. We're not going to be running anything longer than that anyway. It's going to be like a 3625. This is a 30, I believe this is a 3630. Yeah, D3630 Evo. So if anything, the motor that goes in here might be a little shorter than this one. So that will not be a problem. Electronics will be nice and tidy. We'll probably be sticking to like 850 batteries for this. 50 tooth spur, 15 tooth pinion. That is what, 3.33 to 1? Is that right? Does that sound right? That sounds about right. Which I think should be fine, considering we have 30% underdrive to the front. 58 to 1 on about a 1800 on that gear. We should be all right, I think. I hope. The smaller spur gets, well, I mean, we attach out there. I can go bigger if need be, but I hope I don't have to. Plenty of triangulation in the front. It's my thought. There's nothing. That is my thought as to why some designers opt to go for such a short upper link. Because the skid that accompanied this just is a skid for a standard 3 gear. This is like the opposite of what you'd see on a Vanquish. I kid you not. There is, can you see that amount of movement? That's the cumulative play in the balls and links that gets us to there. I'm in a Vanquish slop side to side. Vanquish or a 10 Pro slop side to side like 5 millimeters. And then in the rear we have a little bit more, which is not surprising as we're 145s and 140s. I'm feeling relatively positive. It does kill me that I didn't have enough black blitz ends to put on. They die. I can just dye them black, but we have to first determine whether that's a bug or a feature, and then we got to run this thing on some rocks and see what we think of it. But so I will invite you back for the next one. The next one, will hopefully, hopefully we're close enough that we can throw some drive shafts on here. I got to order a servo, put a servo in there, get some electronics in it, and then the trickiest part, the most time-consuming part of the next one is going to be fitting this body, or maybe it isn't. I don't know. It's a shame that it's Traxxas, so we've got these. Well, actually, is it okay? Is that a bug or is that a feature? Can I don't know. Depending on where we locate the back of the chassis. What I'm going to do is start by cutting the chassis and the body to get the body to sit further and further and further down. If that lines up with something, I can fabricate some blocks and just put body mounts on it. We could put 2 clips in the back. 2 clips in the back, screw point in the front. If we can get the hood down far enough. The front is going to be where it gets tricky. And I mean, these are just the nearest tires that I grabbed off the rack, so. I would like to see something a little bigger, because I don't know. I get kind of a Formula off-road vibe anytime I see one of these bodies. It comes with the little lights that go on and the pods and the big old. Oh, I would love to get the big grill on there, even if we have to trim it up a little bit. So, does it have mirrors too? Yes, it does. It has tiny little mirrors. So. I invite you to come back and see how this one progresses. It came from the Workbench 46. I spent too long. I did this at one point, trying to deburr something. I did that. Have you ever done that? And it only stabbed me a little. It only stabbed me a little. I don't know where the blade went. So there's the better part of a number 11 lurking in here somewhere. I'll probably go. It'll probably flew under there, and I'll go to clean something out, and that's how I'll find it. So hopefully you'll find your way back here. I am smitten by the colors. We are black, silver, and this kind of gunmetal-y color, which kind of ties in with the links. This is and the colors of carbon fiber. The rod ends and the color of the gearbox really tie into the twill of the carbon. So probably a darker wheel. I don't know. Oh, in case anybody's curious, I'm kind of curious myself. So because I was in here thinking, it's a slider, what more do we need to make it into a roller? And we didn't have to go that far. I'm looking for anything to set it on. How about a couple tires? Did I cover the rear width? 4.4. And these have silicone inserts in them. So the wheel tire combos are probably around 1 kilo of wheelos. So they're probably in the half. Well, okay. Let's go grams, because I'm not going to lie. Sometimes wow. That is exactly 2,000 grams as it sits there. 2,000 grams. Precisely 2 kilograms. So each wheel will shed. I dropped it to 1775. So 225, 450, 900 grams. So the slider is 1,100 grams. That is appreciably light. And as I mentioned, it's getting a servo, a speed control, a receiver. There's not much more weight going on there. This might end up being one of those unintentional flyweights yet again. Tire selection, as I said, will be determined by the future. And in case I neglected to mention it, because all of the thoughts, they blur over time. Like wind blowing across sand. What we have is 255 millimeters on the rear track. Look how far out those sit. And Concernicus, meet your brother Concernicles, and they will tell you about the concerns of the day, which is, oh baby, do they want us to do 2.2s? The clearance between the top of that portal box and that wheel is, it might be 3 millimeters. I think it's probably closer to 2. So is it a possibility that if we find the tire and it turns out to be a 1.9, we do a little stretchy? Like, I don't even know. It might clear those. Do we do a stretchy? Run some 2.2s on a 1.9 wheel? I mean, a 2.2 wheel on a 1.9 tire? Maybe. We'll see. We'll see how this guy comes out. The coupe has nothing in the way of a name because I haven't really seen it congeal and form yet. But for a first day, and this all did take place indeed in one day, I am very tired. I should have knocked off a good while ago. I get too ambitious, and then I drag you all along with me. So it'll be interesting. It doesn't look anything like Yella underneath at all. Like nothing, except for that he has identical rails. Other than that, there are no parts in common. So we'll find out this goes. It's a mullet that honestly, to me, if you didn't tell someone that it was, particularly if it's sitting where you can't see the white bits, just sit it like that. It just looks like a regular rig that's sitting a little too high. Hopefully we put enough sprung weight on it that it will push that down, or we're going to have to do the usual thing and find the softest springs that we possibly can to get this thing to settle. I would be genuinely fine leaving it on full springs because it gives me more easily adjustable control over the height. You just turn the collars. But we let it form organically. We'll see where we end up. We'll see where we end up together as a collective. So thank you for coming to me on this one. It's very hot outside. Hot to the point that it has started. Hot to the point that it has started to get hot in here. They threatened us with autumn, and then they took it away, and summer came back. Thank you for coming back on this day of the summer coming back. I'm going to put some tools away. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. I hope that in between now and when we inevitably meet again, you want to all do your very best. Have a good one, everybody. We'll see you again here from the canyon with whatever it is next. Might be some of this, might be some of something else. It is whatever the day brings, and I look forward to seeing you then.